Hi everyone. Nice to have you all coming in. I suppose the koan for I've been thinking about love, and I don't know, Valentine's. It must have been Valentine's Day set me. I forgot about it, but it must have been secretly Valentine's Day set me off. And then I noticed that, I tend to object to official holidays where you're supposed to feel something, and Valentine's certainly falls into that category. But then I decided I would enjoy it this year, so won't have principles about it, and it's kind of nice. So let's sit with. I suppose it's the red thread, but it could be any koan at all what pertains to love. Bodhisattvas, completely enlightened bodhisattvas attached to the red thread. We'll do that one. Famous koan, invokes many confused responses from people. Okay, I'm going to read you a couple of things that, in one thing, one way or another, sort of about love, I think. Adrienne Rich is the person who said, she was talking about relationship as a kind of deepening of the truths you can tell each other. And I think, I don't know, I think that's, I don't know if that's a complete description, but it's interesting, isn't it? If you can just say what's in your heart and in your mind, and you don't have to pretend you don't want something if you do, and things like that. So, so she's interesting like that, because you can see Rich is somebody who just got to things by patience and having them come to her. Here's that thing about talking. Your silence today is a pond where drowned things live. Your silence today is a pond where drowned things live. Now that's a relationship. And I want to, where drowned things live, I want to see rays dripping and brought into the sun. So that's an act of love. It's not my face I see there, but other faces, even your face at another age. Whatever's lost there is needed by both of us. A watch of old gold, a water-blurred fever chart, a key. Even the silt and pebbles of the bottom deserve their glint of recognition. I fear this silence, this inarticulate life. I'm waiting for a wind that will gently open this sheeted water for once and show me what I can do for you. For a wind that will gently open this sheeted water for once and show me what I can do for you, who have often made the unnameable nameable for others, even for me. It's a kind of nice line at the end, because she was a great poet, and she was a great namer of things, and her lover often made the unnameable nameable for others, even for me. I'll give you one more of her love poems. I wake up in your bed. I know I've been dreaming. Much earlier the alarm broke us from each other. You've been at your desk for hours. I know what I dreamed. Our friend the poet comes into my room, where I've been writing for days. Drafts, carvings, poems are scattered everywhere, and I want to show her one poem, which is the poem of my life. But I hesitate and wake. I dreamed, you kissed me, but I hesitate and wake. You've kissed my hair to wake me. I dreamed you were a poem, I say, a poem I wanted to show someone. And I laugh and fall dreaming again of the desire to show you to everyone I love, to move openly together in the pull of gravity, which is not simple, which carries the feathered grass a long way down the upbreathing air. which carry the pull of gravity, which is not simple, which carries the feathered grass a long way down the upbreathing air. There you go. And I just want to throw in Frank O'Hara because he's always fun. So, today, oh, kangaroos, sequins, chocolate sodas, you really are beautiful. Pearls, harmonicas, jujubes, aspirins, all the stuff they've always talked about still makes a poem a surprise. These things are with us every day, even on beachheads and beers. They do have a meaning. They're strong as rocks. And he calls that poem Today. So whatever you've got goes in that poem. Strong as rocks. What else do I want to do here? I want to read this Walcott poem because there's something sort of, Rich has that a lot in her poems. There's something about being true to yourself in love. And so this is the great Derek Walcott. The day will come when, with elation, you'll greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who is yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. That's a poem that every time I read, I think, now, is that what it means? Because there's something really interesting about, like, I don't know, being inside your own life as the path of love, and we keep projecting it outwards and thinking, there's this great, Sappho's poems are mainly fragments, but you can sort of sometimes work out where the poem's going. And she has a lot of these ones about requesting Aphrodite to come with her chariot, drawn by sparrows in this case, actually. Sparrows, lovely sparrows who are the vehicles of love, which is rather wonderful. Drawn by sparrows, and come, and you'll say to me, well, who has hurt you this time, my child? And I'll make her love you again. So it's like, Sappho is completely like, what the goddess is good for is, if somebody wants to leave me, the goddess will tell them they don't want to. Explain my virtues and beauty to them. So it's completely that sort of, I don't know. Love is an acquisition. And so there's that. And then, I don't know, I wanted to say, here, I want to read this other thing, because this is, I do think, like, just, I don't know, friendship and is part of love too. You know, there's the Sappho says, my mad, wild heart, you know, it's always jumping in bed with someone. And just her candor about herself makes it delightful. The let me read. This is for Adrienne Rich by her friend Jean Valentine. You came in a dream yesterday. The first day we met, you showed me your dark workroom off the kitchen, your books, your notebooks. Reading our last, knowing last letters, the years of our friendship, reading our poems to each other, I would start breathing again. Yesterday in the afternoon, more than a year since you died, some words came into the air. I looked away for a second, and then they were gone. 6 lines just passing through. How the muse operates when it operates that way, yeah. When she operates that way. So, so I noticed something surprising happened at New Year for me, actually for some of us, in which Alison and I went to stay with Tess and Maureen, her partner, and got married. And Tess married us, and my daughter came over as a witness. And it was somehow, I don't know, I've just been shy about saying that. And when my friends got on, I was talking to him yesterday, and he said, "Well, I got on." He was one of like the two people who knew about the wedding beforehand, sort of by accident. And he said, "Oh, I got on the next Sunday expecting you to talk about it, but you were talking about your friend who was dying, which is fair enough. So that trumped things, you know. But all that anyway, that had a more urgent need to be talked about. But anyway, I thought my friend reminded me. I thought I shouldn't chicken out. I should say this was a great thing. We had a wonderful time. It was the smallest, but incredibly real event. You know, one of the smallest events in my life. In terms of like, you know, it was great. My daughter flew over, which was really great because I wanted her to connect with my friends too, you know, in my life. And she had a good. My daughter doesn't, you know, my daughter's a bit like me. Is this a private fight or can anyone join? so, so if she doesn't like something, she'll say it straight away. But she was great, and it was lovely seeing her and having her be with Alison and Tess and so on. So I don't know what to say about that, except there's a certain strange thing about human intimacy that's sort of deeply part of the Dharma, you know, and just so incredibly lovely. And yeah, and in a way, showing up, I feel for me, it's showing up for my own life, really. Or that's a cliched way to put it, but really being in my life with this other person. You know, and it's a marvelous thing. So I don't know. I think I have lots more to say about this, but I probably should ask Alison, did you want to say anything?
Um, I never quite know how I'll feel whenever the subject comes up. And when you were speaking, I feel my heart just getting larger than the space allowed for it, and tears come to my eyes. And I think that's one of the things John and I were talking about love a couple of days ago, and this Sunday coming up, and how um, it's the native state of one's being. And you can feel that in children. When we're born into the world, our, our, our feeling towards the universe is one of openness and communion. And we're already, there's a wedding happening constantly as when you're a child. And then slowly we begin to, divorce certain parts of reality. and and so it's thinking of actually coming into an actual marriage. um, I don't know. Part of me is somewhat feral, and when I would think of marriage, I would imagine it was like, trapping a tiger in a zoo, and I just want to be rattling the cages to get out. It would feel like a constraint in some way. But when the wedding actually happened, and also just the days coming up to it, and the ceremony itself, and then afterwards, it's felt much more like being in a wilderness. And John and I are in a tent, and I've got this companion with me, and wildness all around, and that's just a marvelous feeling. And I was struck, John, by something you said about silence in one of the poems you read, where I think it was the first one, the Adrian Rich, where the silence, and how silence, that space in the moment or in relationship, is really it contains the not knowing, it contains the uncertainty, and already you've entered into some kind of lively possibility. Would this be a good time for me to read that little bit from the book, John, of The Zero to the Bone, or later?
You can do anything you want, Alison.
No constraints. I was right. Well, this is in I think one of the things I was afraid of in marriage is that there'll be some um, some kind of ritual constraints laid on things where certain feelings or thoughts or actions or some part of my own psyche, I guess, couldn't be included or might have to be um, tended in a way that or pruned back in a way that would not feel that great to me. So I was reading this book. This author, his name is Christian Wyman, and he's a professor of literature and of religion at Yale Divinity School, and he has had a rare form of cancer for much of his adult life, and so he's always sort of swerving towards the abyss, and then some other treatment shows up, and then he comes back to health, and then this goes back and forth. And in the meantime, while all this is happening, he gets married, and he and his wife have twin daughters. And so one summer, they take a little sabbatical from their work, and they end up in Seattle to do some writing. And this is a little bit about that, the idea of the rituals and silence and love. When our girls were just 2 years old, we spent a summer in Seattle, where I'd lived many years earlier. It was the first break I'd managed to take from my editing job in a decade, and it was only 8 months after I'd undergone a bone marrow transplant. Time had a texture that summer, an hourly reality that we could taste and see. The girls went to a wonderful little daycare in the mornings so my wife and I could write, and then we all came together in the afternoons to do something fun in the city. We adhered to the same nightly ritual that we did at home. I read to the girls and I tucked them in before my wife took over. And the last thing I said every night was, "I love you." To which they always replied promptly, "I love you too, Daddy." But then, one night after my declaration, Fiona was silent. She just kept staring at the ceiling. "Do you love me too, Fiona?" I asked foolishly. A long moment passed. "No, Daddy, I don't." "Oh, Fiona, sweetie, I bet you do," I said. Nothing. "Well," I said finally, "I love you, Finn, and I'll see you in the morning." And then, as I started to get up, I felt her small hand on my arm, and she said dreamily, without looking at me, like a little Lauren Bacall, "I will love you in the summertime, Daddy. I will love you in the summertime." I've told this to a couple of people who thought it was heartbreaking, but I was so proud I thought my heart would burst. "I will love you in the summertime." What a piercing, poetic thing to say at 2 years old. For weeks, I thought about it. Which is to say, given the charmed life we were leaving there in Seattle and all the grace and grief that my wife and I felt ourselves moving through at every second, I will love you in the time where there is time for everything, which is now and always, I will love you in the time when time is no more.
Maybe that's such a marvelous passage. And it's also about how in love, it's like, well, the person says what they want to say. You know? But she has a particular gift of poetic dreaminess. So, yeah. So, yeah, what else? What else do you have to say, Alison?
Hmm. No, I think of the I remember a friend telling me that she and her husband she had a lot of demands she was making. She was feeling her husband wasn't quite um, being affectionate and warm and loving enough, so they had planned this whole day to spend together. And the whole day she was irritated at him that he wasn't feeling the way she had wanted him to feel. And I think that's so much about that when I love someone or something, I'm interested in how they are now. And they don't have to be feeling a certain way. There's no kind of stock exchange, as you would say. I'm not. I'm not making the coffee so that you'll feel a certain way, or taking out the garbage so you'll think I'm a good wife, or whatever the thing is. It's and also I knew this one woman who she was so annoyed at her husband. She was always threatening to leave him. And then she would forget that she was mad at him. And she would suddenly feel this tremendous affection and she would change her mind. And then her mind would bear something about whatever that feeling of intimacy was. So it would bring up the grievance. And then again, she'd be off. And so I think to say that we have to do something in order to cut the connection. It's an it's an there's an active it's an active um, gesture of the psyche that its native state of being to feel in communion. That's it.
Thank you. I think I have something more to say. I want to ask some other people about what they have to say about anything. There's a sort of marvelous feeling about being in the glow of life, when we really have life and everything we feel, even whatever it is we feel, sort of, I get this thing in my heart of, and, years ago, I just had all these pains in my heart, and I thought, am I having panic attacks? Am I having a heart attack? And one of my friends said, no, your heart has been closed for so long, now it's opening up, it feels like a heart attack. I don't think it'd been closed for that long, but the point was that, I grew up in a culture where one didn't speak about feelings at all, because it was bothering somebody, you wouldn't want to do that. And so there's been this rather sweet thing about, what we did at New Year's was to really bother two of our closest friends and my daughter. And she came out and it was sort of very incredibly dear, and I felt at home. And I had a dream about, I'll stop after this, but I had a dream that when I was born, I was given straight to foster care for reasons that have never been clear. But then I was taken back after, I don't know, a bit under a year, again for reasons that have never been clear. That's my family. And but I'm glad they took me back. And but I have dreams about that, and I didn't know anything about that except I'm in deep meditation. I took up quite early. I had this memories of people I didn't know, and one of them was apparently was my foster mother. She had a broken leg, I think, and I asked my mother, who was this woman with this huge Picasso goddess with a big white, white, one of her legs was large and white, and who is she? And oh, that was when you're in foster care. I was in foster care, so it was one of those fun, those kind of things at meditation. Everything becomes translucent. I didn't mind, but I noticed my mind has always been trying to work that out. And after the wedding, I had this dream in which I was in my early life and reconciling those matters. Finding a young boy who'd been orphaned but wasn't now, things like that. So I guess these things are just deep in the psyche, and I think love is just really deep. It's the fundamental thing in consciousness. But then we keep putting tasks on. If I love you, I'll therefore feel this, or if I whatever. And those tasks are always wrong. So that's why we don't talk about it often. Or if you loved me, you would feel this. If you loved me, you would talk to me tonight. Not necessarily. Maybe I'll talk to you in the summertime. Like that. So thank you. Anybody else got anything? Tess, do you want to say anything?
Feels like kind of a feast already, but I don't know. The thing that keeps coming to mind is it's sort of what Alison was saying, I think, but that there's this objective quality to when love appears, that it's the original state of being, but also one of the things I love most about it is that it's completely inexplicable, like on so many accounts. And that can go for, it goes for the people one falls in love with, which, early on do tend to have resemblances to family members and things you have to work through and all that. But even that is just wildly mysterious, who you fall in love with and why and what wants to happen between the two of you. But also how, like, I've had sometimes, a new student will appear in a retreat and I just all of a sudden feel this incredible love well up in me. I just think, well, what is that? And that something Socrates had this great thing I was reading about once, that love and education are the same thing, or the way we hand on the light to each other is all in the realm of love. And that Eros even is the light bringer, the way we pass on the illumination or just the brightness of being comes through that connection, and how there is absolutely no controlling it. Like times when, I don't know, recently I was thinking of, just couldn't stop thinking of a friend of mine. Like all day, no matter what would happen, this friend came into my mind and I just thought of, fond memories. And this happens from time to time. And I sent the friend a note. The friend said, "Oh, I was thinking of you yesterday." It's like, well, where does that come from? And about the wedding, I guess part of why I bring that up is it felt like all these, this often happens around ceremonies, it seems like, but weddings definitely, all these forces conspired to, like that day I happened to receive two beautiful green bowls from a friend that became the water blessing bowls. And, the Christmas tree lent its branches, and the house seemed to tell me exactly how it wanted to become a temple for the wedding. And, all these things just seem to come together. Almost makes me think of, like, when there's that great line when the Buddha awakens and it says all the animals bowed. There's that feeling around when love really appears, that the animals bow and the trees bow and everything is happy to have love as part of things. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, the vulnerability of that is so interesting, like the stepping into the space of the mystery of love, and the vulnerability of both of you in terms of stepping into that ceremony and that relationship to each other. But it feels like we have that vulnerability at any time, that we're actually going to allow ourselves to be glimpsed by another person just moment to moment. And I'm always struck when, we think we're searching for love to come in, but as soon as it appears in me, it sure seems evident everywhere else all of a sudden, So I don't know. That's kind of rambly, but it's a fun topic. So I think that's all for now.
Thank you, Tess. Very good. I think the other thing I want to say about love and is that there's a kind of, the Zen notion of awakening is a kensho is the word, seeing your true nature, to see your true nature. And so seeing the true nature of everything. And I feel like, love is a little bit like that. It's kind of like it comes from the inside and everything comes to us. It's like that. And people often think of love as a delusion, and there's some evidence for that hypothesis. So, but it's also true that it's not in another way. It's really appreciating each other. I remember when my daughter was born, this feeling of like being part of the one galaxy with her, sort of thing, and she was on my chest, and just incredibly, children are still partly in the other world at that time, And then the nurses, and she was great on my chest, and I'm happy, and the nurses, they won't take her away, so she'll sleep, but she's sleeping now. No, you might roll on her, things like that. No, but, and I didn't kick and scream, but, so they took her, and then she screamed all night in there. I said it to Alison. I said, there's a kind of some sort of story about love there, And I always felt like I'd let her down by not fighting with the nurses, but it's pretty hard to fight with the nurses in that sort of thing. And I didn't know if they were right. Maybe I would roll on her like, big old animal sort of thing, but I didn't think I would. And then I told Alison that, and she said, "Oh, that's just part of like being a parent. That happened to me too." So love is also those, I think you must say that love is also the feelings of not quite pulling it off when you wanted to, and not all those kind of things, that you make an offer to the universe, and the universe does whatever it does with it. And that love is knowing that that's all right. The other person's allowed to be the way they are, that we're not living the wrong life like that. So I think and I'll read, here's a famous love poem from Auden, W.H. Auden. It's called The More Loving One. I think it's about love as a sort of practice, understanding there's a deep connection no matter what people do. Looking up at the stars, I know quite well that for all they care, I can go to hell. But on earth, indifference is the least we have to dread from man or beast. How should we like it were stars to burn with a passion for us we could not return? If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me. Admirer as I think I am of stars that do not give a damn, I cannot, now I see them, say I missed one terribly all day. Were all stars to disappear or die, I should learn to look at an empty sky and feel its total dark sublime, though this might take me a little time. So there's a famous line there, or two lines. If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me. And like most poems that make it escape out into the wild and appear in like poetry sites and things, often after I've read them for a while, I think, oh, maybe it means something differently from what I thought, you know. But that one's kind of sweet in a way. So, yeah. Michelle Riddle, did you want, I saw you here somewhere. Did you want to say anything?
Hi. I'll just say a little. What you just said about not refusing the gift. To me, that's a way of that, what Allison said about we have to do something to cut the connection. And it's something I've been paying attention to a lot with myself, and how difficult it can be sometimes to just appreciate the good. There's a vulnerability in that. And when John said, I shouldn't chicken out. I should tell you about this wonderful thing in my life, that I got married to someone I love. That thing about I shouldn't chicken out, right? There's one part of our rational mind because like, why would I chicken out from sharing that? But I can relate to that a lot. Because for me, and I'm not saying this is John, but for me, just being able to appreciate the good without covering it up with, well, but it could be better. I should have done that. There's this other thing I didn't do. There's whatever. It's so much more difficult sometimes than it seems it should be. But when I can do that, everything becomes so closer. It just that division, that cutting of the connection starts to evaporate when I can just appreciate my life. So that's what was coming up for me. Thanks.
Excellent. John Bennett, would you like to say anything?
Just before this session, I took a walk on a hill above our house, and walking up this snowy road and suddenly having the world fall away and listening to the sounds of a stream gurgling under the ice that I walked over, and then looking at a old twisted, probably 80-year-old fence post that the decades and the weather has turned into this wonderful, very strange spiral that kind of goes off into space. The wire that it once held up has long since evaporated into that same space. And hearing a distant bird, one of the very few that remain here in the mountains of Colorado during the winter, and the silhouette of a red-tailed hawk that spends a lot of time hovering over our house. All this, I just was overcome with this feeling of deep, deep love for everything around me. And it occurred to me at the time, oh yeah, and it's Valentine's Day, and John Tarrant's going to talk about love in this session. And then two things you said, or you and Allison said. You said, I wrote these down at the very beginning. You referred to the involuntary love that just appears. And Allison said, it's a native state of being to feel in communion. And I just, that's exactly the feeling that arose in me. And it feels like I don't know how I would cut the red thread. I mean, it's part of us, I think. There's nothing to cut. I don't know. I could babble on, but I think I'll stop there. But thank you.
Thanks, John. George Floyd, do you have anything to say?
There's so much. I don't really know where to start. But what you were saying about feeling the universe come into you and you come into the universe, well, reminded me, and also what Tess was saying about weird connections that happen. in some of these circumstances reminded me of a relationship I had with a woman who was quite a bit younger, and we were crazy in love with each other, and you got the feeling that it would fill this universe, and then the universe beyond that, the universe beyond that. And actually, to explain the connections, I should mention that I have a somewhat unusual last name, and this woman was also someone, we were both were explorers in this domain of endless universes that we could fill entirely. But of course, there was an end to it, and it ended. And I couldn't get over it for years. And I moved into a house, an old house, little house in a nearby village. There were some old books in there. And one was by Neville Shute, an author that I like. And it was about an older man, or not middle-aged man, falling in love with a young woman he was a lawyer and she was his ward. And he knew it couldn't go anywhere, but he loved her anyway. And she moved back to Australia and tried to develop a village into a town like Alice, which was the name of the book. I liked the book a lot. And when I finished with it, as one does, I kind of looked around and I noticed there was an epigram that I hadn't seen before. And it was a poem by W.B. Yeats, which you probably know, and which goes, when you are old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and dream of the soft look your eyes once had and of their shadows deep. And how many men have loved you for your gentle grace and loved your beauty with a love both false and true, but one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And when I looked above the epigram, the owner of the book had written her name in the book, and her name was the first name of the woman I've been in love with, and the last name was mine. And needless to say, it was somewhat mind-altering. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Amelia, do you want to say anything? For or against love is the topic. Actually, it's whatever you want. I was just teasing about love.
Well, I'm in favor. Yeah, I guess I'm this week has been, the theme for me has been, with the koan, can I bear this happiness? The idea of, can I bear this changeability? Can I stay with the weather? And that also is feels like how love, as Allison said, it's a native state, but my access to it is so changeable and comes and goes. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, Amelia. The other person I want to ask something is Amaryllis Fletcher, our great violinist. Do you have anything to say about anything?
Yeah, I thought about love quite a bit. And in one retreat, I had an experience out of the blue. It seemed that my heart was so big, like Allison described, that it couldn't possibly fit inside me. But I think truly love has many ways of coming out. And for me, music is it one way. And just the feeling of being deeply connected to people. The red thread.
Yeah. How does it feel when you talk about that? It's really moving to hear you talk about it. So I was wondering how it felt for you.
It feels like it's so big it can't be put in words.
I suppose they're the kind of words we have, aren't they? This is not describable. Thank you. It's really touching. Yeah. Yeah. Ha.
And I'm so grateful to encounter a community where I feel this is a shared trait, shared characteristic.
Very good. Brian Huffer, do you want to say anything? Everybody's quite open to saying, piss off. That's in Australian, whatever it is.
No piss off today. Well, I was really struck the connection with the red thread, and lately my partner and I've been joining in with some Lunar New Year activities here in town. And last night we went to a performance, and first of all, I was feeling such a connection with the community that was it was all about the the Asian culture and so forth, and just seeing the explosion of red everywhere. That's kind of a Chinese feature, and all these performances in this theater. I was noticing how critical I was for some of the performances because they weren't professional, and some of the people weren't hitting the right notes when it was harmony. And then I thought about what it was like to be those people, and I think that was something that I've been noticing, just seeing what is it like to be somebody else, just looking at their experience and how much they're putting their hearts into these performances. It really touched me. And then I think that was that red thread thing going on.
Thanks, Brian. That's beautiful. Yeah. Empathy. Enlightenment is empathy. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. Here's someone I haven't seen for a while, but and you're welcome to say no, but I'd love to hear from Orlando, someone I always think of as knowing a lot about love.
It's good to see you, by the way. I was feeling nostalgic and thought I'd hop in. I didn't get most of the koan, so I only was holding it as the red thread, which actually was enough for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the idea of love, I've been struggling a bit. I have long COVID and I've dropped out of my Master's of Social Work program and I'm home a lot. And I heard somebody say the other day, I have a long history of taking suffering personally. And I've kind of been holding that like a koan as well. It struck me. And I am trying to change some things about myself and be more open-hearted. And I'm a little frustrated because it's really hard to do that when you're in the midst of the Negredo. I kind of, want to tell the universe, hey, give me, if I'm to get these lessons, give me a little leg up. I was thinking of what Allison said about the love, and my son has autism, and his teacher said he may never tell you that he loves you, and you just have to accept that he was in preschool. And I tell him I love you all the time. And then one day when he was about 9, I said, I love you. And he said, yeah. And that was the first time he answered me. And it felt like, of course you do. Like, why does this need to be said? We know that. Yeah. So I'm glad to be here. And I'm going to hold the red thread as gently and gracefully as I can.
The red thread. Links us to each other. All pieces of the great constellation.